Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine.
Here.
Lamore.
Here.
Felder.
Here.
Whitman.
Here.
Echoangeli.
Excused.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Guide our working together. Give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the peace and welfare of the residents of this community.
Pledge allegiance to the flag. Clerk, first item, please.
The first item is, the question is, there are any amendments to the agenda?
Any items on the agenda the council wishes to have amended at this time? Be there. Seeing none. Next item, please.
The next item would be citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
Thank you. Are there any comments from those present here this evening that wish to be made that is not related to an agenda item? Any comments not related to an agenda item? Seeing none. Next item, please.
Public hearings.
Okay, I don't think there's any comments before, so move forward with the public hearing. Correct, clerk?
Correct.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing regarding item 1975, special assessment related to snow removal fees. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this public hearing, item 1975? Seeing none? Close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 1976, public hearing to receive and review comments on the special assessment roll for the expenses of blight, board-up fees where owners have failed to pay for same. And we received no comments in the clerk treasurer's office, Your Honor.
Thank you. At this time, open the public hearing on item 1976, special assessment regarding blight and boarded-up fees. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this item, 1976? Seeing no items or no comments, close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 1977, public hearing to receive and review comments on the special assessment roll for the expenses of weeds and grass cutting fees where owners have failed to pay the same. And I do have one comment on that, Your Honor.
Very well, if you want to do that, and then before we open the public hearing for those that are here.
So our office received a call regarding the property at 509 Conant Avenue regarding grass weed cutting. It was from Bernice Pippins, and she was not able to be here this evening, but wanted to ask if it would be acceptable to establish a payment plan for the balance that she owes. And the city manager and I discussed it. I, as treasurer, have no issue establishing a payment plan with her if it's acceptable to city manager, and it appeared to be, so.
Any other comments, Mr. Pastor?
Nope, I'm fine with that.
Okay, as we move forward on the public hearing, if there are other items on this, but just for council's awareness, as we get into our agenda later and under the consent agenda, that item, which is correct here, grass and weeds, is 1995 will have to be pulled for that correction to be made. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Are there any comments on item 1977? Comments related to the special assessment on weeds and grass cutting? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Clerk, next item.
The next item is item number 1978, public hearing to receive and review comments on the special assessment roll for the expenses of rental housing inspection fees where owners have failed to pay for the same. And I do have one comment, as the clerk treasurer's office was contacted about that item as well.
If you could include that comment first, then we'll have the public hearing.
So we, via the building department, we received a letter from Kathy Coates, and she resides in Northville, but her property address, she also has property in Monroe at 535 North Macomb. And she did not, from her explanation, it doesn't appear that she received all of her notices in a timely manner. She has paid the rental inspection fee. She sent that along with this letter, but asked that the penalty be waived because she did not receive her letter. Again, I discussed this prior with the city manager, and I, as the treasurer, have no objection to waiving the fee, nor did the city manager.
Yes, do any other comments?
Nope, I think it's fine.
So that property at 535 North Macomb would need to be pulled. That one would need to be pulled. And what
1990.
item was that?
1993.
1993. So that will need to be pulled and adjusted when we get to that section.
When we get to consent agenda, council will need to pull that so we can make that amendment as we look at the others, and there may be other comments, as I said before, that come forward. So at this point, I'll open the public hearing on item 1978, which is a special assessment regarding rental housing inspection fees. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding item 1978? Seeing none, close the public hearing. And next item.
The next item is item number 1985, public hearing to receive and review comments on proposed ordinance number 18-003, an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year budget for the city of Monroe ending June 30th, 2019.
Thank you. Before I open the public hearing, the city manager, Mr. Pastu, has some comments to make regarding the proposal from our, at the first reading, is also from some discussions. And I'll give it to you, Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. As we discussed during the work session earlier, there was a couple of changes from the last meeting. One was identified in the fact sheet submitted to City Council, where we initially proposed $100 an increase of the rental inspection fee from 75 to 100, and we're recommending it actually be adopted at 110. And it's a function of relooking at some of the costs associated with the operation so that it's not being subsidized by other building operations. So that was one change. During the work session, I mentioned there was a little bit of confusion at staff level on how we wanted to handle the three positions that were recommended for removal during the proposed budget related to public safety. And as I said, I think the intent was to put those positions back in at least certainly in June, but if the council desires, what was handed out earlier would increase the public safety division personnel budget by $225,000 from what was initially proposed, and it would reduce by a corresponding amount from the contingency, most of which is the DTE reserve line item for that. The other thing to make clear is with the budget, again, following last week's work session, is that the proposed budget does have the $70,000 in there with the Arthur Lesso Community Center appropriation, with the understanding we'll be amending the lease agreement here in the next couple of months to incorporate items that would allow it to be added an additional $60,000 after the first of the year. I think those account for the changes from the last meeting and probably restated for clarification purposes.
Very well. At this time, I'll open the public hearing on item 1985 regarding proposed ordinance number 18-003, ordinance to adopt the fiscal year budget ending June 30th, 2019. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding item 1985? If there's anybody who wishes to speak, I just ask that you state your name and address for the record so the clerk has that. Any comments? Yes, okay. Would you have any on file, I should ask?
No, I received a letter, but it will be from this presenter,
Oh, okay,
so
very good.
it's
Then
fine. But I
he's
just
here to
wanted
read it
make
or
sure he and I-
speak as well. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mike Smith. Address is 624 West Vienna, Temperance, Michigan, 48182. I am not a member of the city community, but I do work here. I do work with the Arthur Lesso Community Center. I'm here on behalf of the Monroe-Lenawee County AFL-CIO, President Sharp, who submitted a letter to this council. Do the city council members have the letter? So I don't have to read it to them, or should I read it to them?
Well, why don't I read it into the record and then you can make your comments? Then it would be very official. It's
Okay.
the way it's supposed to
And
be.
those that are also here, but also watching, would also understand the full context of the letter. So,
All right.
excellent. If you
Dear
can hang on,
Mayor,
Mike. Go
dear
ahead, sir.
Mayor and City Council, on behalf of the Monroe-Lenawee County AFL-CIO Central Labor Council, I am contacting you about the article I read in the Monroe Evening News on April 3rd, 2018. The article was in reference to City Council considering a budget reduction of 50% for the ALCC from $140,000 to $70,000. It is not our intention to take anyone to task, but I hope I may influence the decision you are about to make. It is our position that the full funding of $140,000 be maintained. I believe we can all agree vibrant programs at ALCC have a stabilizing effect on the lives of young people who reside in the community. By providing safe and adequately equipped spaces for tutoring, physical activities, basketball, and other sports, ALCC instills discipline, healthy study, exercise habits, and teamwork. I would be so bold to state some may feel this is one of the few oases where those who work so hard to impact the lives of young people truly make them feel loved and valued. If ALCC ceased to exist, I shudder to consider the negative ripple effects it would create. I know a potential business approach was presented to secure grant funding and seek additional fundraising opportunities. This may be a possible way to enhance programming, but it is not something that could ever provide the stable funding that ALCC requires to maintain operations. In addition, I've been made aware of the partnership fundraising activities of ALCC Director Anthony Hoskins participates with our AFL-CIO Community Services Liaison to the United Way of Monroe-Lenawee Counties. Annual United Way Campaign Presenter Solicitor, Easter Egg Hunt 2008 through 2017, Build a Better World Literacy Event 2018, Supplying Our Future Backpacks and School Supplies for Kids in Monroe County. On behalf of the Monroe-Lenawee County AFL-CIO Central Labor Council, I would like to express our most sincere gratitude for taking time to consider our position. If there are any questions and/or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Lee Sharp, President, Monroe-Lenawee County AFL-CIO, CLC.
Mike,
Couple of things that I would like to add to that. First, this evening was rather educational in that we actually had had a United Way board meeting prior to your meeting, and some of the comments that took place. There may be a misconception that somehow if the city reduces or eliminates funding for Arthur Lesso Community Center, that somehow the United Way would respond in kind, that we would not provide funding. That is not accurate. The United Way's funding is not based upon the funding that the city provides to the Arthur Lesso Community Center. Certainly the United Way and the staff are here to support Anthony, to support the Arthur Lesso Community Center in any way that we can if it's to seek additional funding. I would reinforce, however, as somebody who is, for lack of a better term, a professional solicitor, we're out in the community continually asking folks for dollars in a organized approach to the United Way. So when our agencies go out, and they have to, right? They have to go out and solicit funds to support their programs, and many of them do a very good job of it, but there's only so much funding to go around. So there's a finite amount of money in this community. So when we look at that, we want to make sure that one, that these programs can be maintained and Arthur Lesso continues to exist. This program is incredibly important to this community. Before I came on to the United Way, I can tell you that working at the Monroe County Youth Center, that was one of the fond things that I heard from the kids that I came into contact with, was the one shining star in the community was the Arthur Lesso Community Center, of which I was not aware of until I came to work in Monroe County, in North here. So I know that program is well respected. I know that the things that they provide have a positive impact in the youth in this community. And certainly any way that we can continue to work together and make sure that that facility maintains their core funding. You know, as a director, I'm sure that he counts on those dollars coming in so that he can run operations. Now, if he can seek out additional dollars to enhance programs, certainly that makes sense to me, but we have to make sure that we're maintaining that core funding so that this program can continue to operate in this community. I implore you to really consider how that organization continues to maintain its funding. And I know you have to look at your budgets, you have to project, but sometimes we have to make sure that when we impact a particular budget, how it's going to impact the other budgets down the line if there is an increased need for services with law enforcement and whomever, because we don't have maybe some positive programs happening at the Arthur Lesso Community Center that have caring people working there to support the staff or the students that go to that program. So I just ask you to hesitate and consider some of the other outcomes that maybe perhaps weren't considered initially. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening regarding this public hearing? Comments related to item 1985.
Hello, Pastor Boone, 924 East 2nd Street, Monroe. Just wanted to, I was here at the work session, and so what I heard is that maybe there has been some strategic planning and some other things that were supposed to be done that weren't necessarily done correctly with the ALCC. And so the way I look at it is the last thing we need to do is penalize the children in the community. You know, if we need to look at how things are being handled down there, if you want more oversight, I can understand that. But to dangle money, to dangle this, well, we can give 70 now and possibly give 60, I think that that's not fair to the children in the community, to the young people who utilize it. One of the things I know that was brought up last week is that there is $90,000 being spent right now on the ice arena to maintain that building until it's sold or possibly made into the visitor center, which is the proposal out there. And that would be a wonderful and very exciting program. But right now we have real kids. We have real people who are utilizing the community center. I know that there are children who are down there eating every day. I know that there are children who are going to the after-school programming. I know that there are children who are using that place, and I know that it's a safe haven. And so I think as a community, we need to think about our children right now. It's great to think about our future, but I think this cut would be very drastic, and we would see an impact on our children right now. As I said last week when I was here, in Detroit, where I grew up, they cut all of the, and closed all of the community centers. And we saw an increase in drugs in our community. We saw an increase in crime. And so we just need to think about that, because our children, they need things to do. Our children, they need sports. They need activities. And that's one of the things that Arthur Lesso should be providing. It may not be what it was, but I was there when they had their, was 50th anniversary and 75th anniversary. And all of these folks were up there talking about all of the wonderful programs that had been at ALCC and all of the wonderful things that it had done in the years in the community. Chief Hoskins was there, and he talked about how he had never even thought about being a firefighter and how the old director had kind of mentored him and led him on that track. These are the things we need to see. This is the poorest area in all of Monroe County. And at the community center, there are positive role models. There are people there who care. There are people there who can help these children make good decisions. So I think, we need to come together and collectively come up with a better way to fund the center and also to work together to keep the center as a vital part of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening regarding item 1985? Other comments regarding, okay. Name and address, please.
Oh, my name is Linda McFadden. I live at 1810 Bayview Drive. I just want to say that I work at the community center. I've been there for over maybe 25 years. And I did a lot of things like programs with the kids and all that. And to me, it's a very vital place for some of our kids to be. Some of our kids look forward coming to the center. Some of them come to me and talk to me about personal things that they can't talk to their parents about. And I'm glad to have that opportunity to have an ear to listen to the kids. But I want to say, by me working there, I learned a lot, not only from my staff, the staff that works there, but also from the kids. So I think it's vital that we keep whatever funding that we have at the community center, because I would like to do more programs also for the kids. And I just want to just be a part of the center. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening regarding item 1985? Yes, name and address, please.
Sonia Hudson, 632 West 9th Street, Monroe, Michigan, 48161. I like the comment that Pastor Boone had made about dangling the money, you know, because ultimately that's kind of the way I see it too. And a lot of the kids that go to the center might not be relevant right now, but ultimately these kids are going to continue to grow in age. They're going to be in the high school one day, and how many high schools does Monroe have? Just one. So they're all going to intermingle at one point in time. The core values that they can receive at the Arthur Leslow Community Center will allow for them to get the growth and, you know, just the growth that's needed to become upstanding citizens. They're not garbage that's just going to go away. It's garbage that'll blow over into your yard one day. We can't look at the center or look at it for what it should have done because it's not closed yet. There's still more that can be done. But without the funding, how can we do more? That's all.
Other comments from those present here this evening? Other comments on item 1985, the proposed budget? Seeing no other comments, close the public hearing at this time. If there's any comments from council, but if not, we'll move to the consent agenda.
Your Honor,
Oh, good.
comments regarding the proposed budget.
Bring us the floor on the council action, and then have the clerk read it, and then we can make comments as well as motions. If that's, public hearing's closed, but an hour later. But is that-
Maybe
you're
just
not-
some
you're not talking
clarification,
about-
just
Okay.
some clarification, maybe?
All right, before we move to council action, some clarifications from, or comments regarding the item before we move to action.
Well, I just wanted some clarification, basically, for our citizens tonight regarding the ALCC, as well as the new IT position that's going to be created. And I think that we pretty much clarified as to how public safety is going to be handled. So if we can just get maybe a little bit more clarification on those two items in the budget.
Probably should bring it back then on the council. I'm looking at Mr. Buds. Back on
Council
we
action?
can start that. Is that?
I would agree, Your Honor.
Okay. So I thought maybe it was other comment from clarifications, or maybe some comments. So clerk, next item, please, and then we'll have some, appears to be some comments.
Next item is under council action, item number 1985, proposed ordinance 18-003, an ordinance to adopt the budget ordinance fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019 for the city of Monroe, up for its final reading.
Well, we know that there was some information provided. I'm looking to Mr. Buds, but maybe we should just bring it to the floor for, can we bring it to the floor for discussion before final reading? And then, because I know there's some the city managers proposed some adjustments that we heard in the public, prior to the public hearing. So I'm just looking to get in the right direction here.
I think that's what we should do. Someone should make a motion based on the agenda item. Someone will support it, we'll call that roll, and then
Then we'll have
discussion.
comments. I think so.
Your
too.
Honor,
Councilwoman Viney?
I'd like to make a motion for item 19. Wait a minute. Now, I want to make a motion to adopt the budget ordinance fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019 with a change. Is that,
Well, you want to bring it to the floor for discussion first, or you want to just make the motion because
let's have the discussion first.
then we can see where we're at? Okay, you want to make a motion, put it on the floor for discussion?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to put item 1985 on the floor for discussion.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Viney, supported by Councilwoman Moore to bring item 1984 to the floor for discussion prior to the final reading and adoption. Clerk, please call the roll.
So I'd like some clarification.
Sure.
So then there will have to be a separate motion for the final reading, correct, Mr. Buds? Okay. Councilperson Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Iko Angelique, sorry, he's
Not
excused. Vining?
Yes.
And Mayor Clark.
Yes. Councilwoman?
Since we haven't adopted this budget yet, and I was under the impression after meeting with the city manager and the ALCC executive board that we were going to have some time before these cuts actually took place. I know there was some confusion as to that. Some of us thought this would take place July 1. Some of us thought that we would have until next year before these changes actually went into effect. So there was some confusion about that. So basically, I just want to propose that we do approve this budget with the change that ALCC would receive the full 140 this year. Still working with the work plan, and that we revisit this next budget season. Is that a
Don't think
clear
it's a-
motion, or do I need to clear that up?
Well, I think there may be other comments. You can make the motion, but then we
Okay.
have to take votes, and there may be other comments from council members
Okay.
related to this or other items in the budget, because as we know that there was a proposal from the administration regarding the public safety component. So I'll take any comments. I know Councilman Lamore, you wanted to make some comments on the budget and
I
maybe
do.
clarifications, and see if we can get those
Yeah,
answered.
yeah, I was looking for some clarification regarding the ALCC distribution of that funding. Can you give me some answers on that, City Manager, Mr. Pastor?
Well, and again, it kind of goes to Councilmember Vining's, comment about the flow of funds. As proposed, you've got $70,000 that would be appropriated the first 6 months of the fiscal year, starting July 1st. That would run, obviously, through December 31, and this is where the calendar year end of it, and maybe some of that confusion comes in, is in order, as a condition of releasing some of the remaining $60,000 that we had talked about last week, is, we'll identify a number of items to wrap up, if you will, on the first phase of the strategic plan, and then that would condition the release of the remaining $60,000 that we had talked about. And then start also, part of that process is looking at the other revenue alternatives, whether they're through fundraising, plan, whether there's other grants and program revenues that could be pursued, and/or partnerships that could go along with that to help diversify the revenue stream that's provided there at the ALCC. So that was the thought, is the first part, let's just get through, finish implementing a lot of the items identified in the strategic plan, and then start working long-term. And I think it's important to have, the governance and the administrative end of it in place, structurally sound, everybody buying into it, and then work your way into the revenue generation aspect of it. But it was $70,000 to get you through the rest of the calendar year, and then And then the remaining 60 would cover the rest of the fiscal year that would end June 30th, 2019. So hopefully everybody followed my timeline and tracking with that, so.
Okay, so basically, we're talking about an overall $10,000 decrease, which we've discussed, which could actually, with a strong strategic plan, we could fully fund to $70,000.
That would always
Potentially.
be the council's discretion, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Some other clarifications I'm looking for also are on the new IT position that we are proposing. If I can just get some clarification on that, just for our public purposes.
Well, we've had a GIS position, a Geographic Information Systems employee that retired this last summer with the engineering department. And we were looking certainly to change and, upgrade, I think, some of the skill set to meet some of the expectations with the GIS system that we have. And clearly, given this very specialized skill set, the position itself is not cheap in the marketplace. But in the interim, we've been contracting out with one of our consulting engineers to provide that service. And I had asked Mr. Sell beforehand, how much have we paid? And the answer was $94,000. And so it's essentially taking a previously funded position in engineering, put it in an IT department so that it's got a broader range. Not that I had any problem necessarily with engineering. I just think we need to look at this GIS service for benefits, not only with engineering, utilities, building department, but also maybe police, fire operations as well. Elections, I mean, a lot of it has a broad application, so. But went from a full-time position, individual retire, we contracted out probably for the last 10 months or so, and looking to put that back online as a staff person for the broad benefit of the city.
Councilman?
I think that's for me.
Councilman Felder?
I, for one, would certainly be open to discussing an additional apportionment of $10,000 to the ALCC conditional to the consent of council, specifically regarding progress of the following items: fundraising, partnerships in the community, community outreach, and a plan for expansion to be paid out on January 1 of 2019, and if the city manager finds it appropriate and necessary, and if council finds itself amenable, I would like to make that amendment to item number 1985, proposed ordinance 18003.
So if I understand, you said 10,000, but is this,
An additional and separate apportionment of $10,000.
what about what's proposed? The 70,000? And the city manager's proposal and discussion has been that $70,000 would be allocated, and if some of the items in which you said were part of those discussions, that there'd be the $60,000. You're saying you want to, I'm not make sure I'm trying to understand where you want the 10,000 to be, and is it in addition to?
Yep, so the $70,000 is over the next 6 months, pending this is
Correct.
approved. And then we, I think, are apportioned $60,000 paid out on January 1, pending council approval of 2019. I would like to propose an additional $10,000 apportionment specific to those items that I laid out: fundraising, partnerships in the community, outreach in the community, and a plan for expansion. I believe that most of the other items that were enumerated last week during the work session regarding these items were mostly administrative, and I would just like to see some substantive progress and would be willing to put forth that stretch goal to make that happen. This would mean that for this budget cycle, the ALCC would receive its full $140,000 apportionment with no change in funding for the current fiscal year. However, I do this in recognition that this would be a non-recurring expenditure, and that we do this in full expectation that there will be a reduction in the future. Essentially, I think it's important to give the people here at the ALCC and the board time to plan financially for their future and to make accommodations to account for the reduction that we are proposing.
City manager's writing notes, make sure we have that, because if it comes to a motion, we have to know what that is without repeating it, so. 4 items, I believe. Fundraising, partnerships, community outreach, and expansion. Correct?
Yep.
Before we take motions, I know what you want to make amendment to, as you said, and Councilwoman Vining wanted to restore the amount as proposed. Other comments from council members?
I do.
Councilman Jermaine?
I need some clarification on the first responders. So as it stands right now, we're not losing anyone.
The funding authorized positions would be restored to the current approved budget that we're operating under now, yes.
And I was hoping to get presentations from, that's not going to happen now because we're leaving everything the way it was originally.
Well, I think that, as I mentioned in the work session, I'll have this back before you at the May 7th meeting to talk a little bit about the assessment. We could go into a lot of discussion regarding, the current configuration of the departments. The assessment looks at, long-term as to with that. And if it's council's pleasure, we can always bring, the chiefs in for, very similar to what we did with our orientations, with the.
And nothing happens to Mantis at this point? Everything is like-
Status quo. Yep, status quo.
Thank you.
We're looking at, before I make some other comment, I'm sorry, Councilwoman, you have other
Oh, I'm
questions?
done, thank you.
Okay. Just, at the work session, the city manager passed out to the council a proposed public safety assessment schedule, which talks about timelines, talks about outcomes, and a process of discussing how that's going to be configured in the future through this assessment process. And it talks about the scope of the assessment down through the long-term alternatives, which includes reductions as we talk about potential reductions, for sure, as we've talked about already with DTE and knowing what the long-term about that is. So that assessment, I think, will also give the opportunities for police and fire, EMS, all those partners that may be involved, the opportunity to come and present to the council in this discussion as well, as that course and path goes on regarding what an external assessment might bring. So that's kind of ties to that part. I won't speak much more on that. So I have some comments on the budget, but also there's one councilwoman left. I don't know if you have any comments. If not, I'll move forward.
I just want to make one comment that when it comes to the center, that I would love to see us give them the full amount and for this year, but it doesn't change the fact that change is coming and that we have to prepare. I'm very familiar with nonprofit work, and you can't depend on any funding. And so I just wanted to voice my opinion that should I vote to, give them the extra 10,000, it's really not changing anything. It's just giving you time to make changes that you really need to think about, because change is inevitable. It's coming down the road. That's all I wanted to say.
I guess I have a few comments. We've had, it was 2 years ago that we started this process with the board at the ALCC, talking about strategic planning, talking about reconfiguring how we're going to meet the needs of the future. Talked about strategic plan, new bylaws, policies, and updating that to the extent of what actually is being conducted out at the ALCC, and some of the items that weren't in the purpose statement. It said nothing about seniors, and I think that's a critical component that should be going on at the ALCC. So that was 2 years ago. It took us about a year to get through that. Input from the board members, input from the council, the consultant that worked us through that process came up with some suggestions and recommendations, and we're still not closer. And I think we're closer. In fact, we do have some documents and idea where we're going. But the past year, I think it was talked about different comments. But some of those programs, some of those measurables, and some of the things that were talked about haven't come to completion, haven't been instituted. So we're right back where we started, and then we're talking about the funding. I'm just going to make a comment. I went back and looked over the years and trying to see some of the interaction, but also the funding. So I just went back in an old spreadsheet that we council had before, and from 2012 on, it's 140,000, 140,000. It hasn't changed, and the amount to it is today here again. But now we start talking about looking for some opportunities of how we want to not just improve programming, but also steps to be taken. There was a comment earlier from about the United Way, and the funding. There is funding that comes to the ALCC from the United Way, but there's also expectations of outcomes with that funding. There's reporting, if I understand it correctly, of what it is you have to do to continue to get funding. Something that we've not had done and something we need to have done. And I think this is the opportunity to, it's not dangling the money or holding it back. The idea is there's expectations of moving forward, and I think it's not about fundraising. I don't think anybody here in council is saying, we're going to hold the money and you have to fundraise the amount that is being held. That's not what's been said. I think Councilman Felder said it. He has a list of items that he'd like to see. I've had conversations with the board director and Anthony and others, and they say items that I think that are important of opportunities of different than we're currently doing, and I think there's just opportunities to do that. Partnerships that may give career opportunities for youth when you talk about the MCA, which is 2 blocks away. Opportunities to attend that camp, which didn't occur. Opportunities to bring them in to give programs not only to the youth but also to the seniors. Opportunities to have a visitation day. There's so many opportunities, and that's what we're looking for. And it's not sitting there trying to hold it over somebody to say, if you don't do these things, well, that's what I think it can be done. I think it can easily be done. I'm gonna share a comment that frustrates me because I've shared it with some of the board and the director, but the fact that we have seniors that were going to the ALCC for meals, and it's no longer being done there. I don't think that seniors in our community have to go elsewhere to get meals if the program, and that's a dispute that occurred, and one of my topics on there, that has to be resolved. It has to be resolved that the center is serving meals to seniors. Senior programming and getting money from the Commission on the Aging is critical. And I can't think why that we should have that expectation. And to meet those expectations, if you're getting funding from the Commission on the Aging, there has to be measures. So not just give the money and say, come back next year. And unfortunately, we in the past have kind of had that as a kind of the relationship and the partnership. There's been discussion on the revenue and what's paid for what. The $10,000 less, but we also know we're getting requests to take over more some of the but the operational costs at the center. And just as we've done with other properties, we probably should take on all the costs. And that's part of what that agreement has to spell out. So the first step, as I look at this, it's, the proposal is that the funding is still there. And the funding is not going to be different if some expectations are met. And I think we need to start doing it now, both from the benefit of all the residents, but benefit for the center, benefit for the board to know that we have a path together to get there. So the $70,000 is proposed is the money to continue. The board has, it's a short time frame, the end of the year, but we're not asking for everything to be done. We're just asking to show some items that are on a path to be done. And I think there's a half dozen that I've shared with members of the board that I think that are easily achieved. And coming back and then showing the progress, getting reports here on a quarterly basis or presentations to what's occurring. It's not just about numbers. It is about impact, and it is about influencing and giving opportunities to youth. But we have to also measure that in some fashion. I think that's part of the expectation. So those are just my comments and reviews and as we got here. And I know there's been some comments made about closing. There's no proposal to close the ALCC. That's never been said. And I think it was the last meeting, the comment was, we have a partnership currently with the board and we wanted that to continue, just as they have expectations from the city regarding some operational items with the facility. We have some requests also regarding continuation and programs and expanding. So the city has an obligation to provide the center in a partnership way, whoever that is, to provide programming and assistance. And if it's, and I think we can get there with the leadership, but we also have to have some measurables to get there. It benefits everybody. If it's not, I think the Councilman Whitman, there's many opportunities. I know there's a folk campaign on fundraising. I think that could be accelerated. I think there's been some funding that's come for that. I saw it in their finance sheet, but we really need to champion that collectively. The 75th anniversary was a great event. I agree with the comments that were said. People stood up and said what it is they achieved, what they obtained from that was life impacting for them. Do we have a list of the people that were there for future use? Do we collect those contacts for that we could send information? I'm not talking about dollars always. It's really about how they can maybe if they're give back to what that is. There's so many programs and opportunities, and I just think we just have to take this pause and reflect and be honest. It's not pointing what's not being done, it's pointing what we need to do. And some things that maybe didn't get done in the last year are still there in opportunities. There's a list of others. I'm not going to go through some of the conversations that I've shared. So now we're about the budget today. And it's being implied, I think, or thought that the council doesn't want to support the ALCC with the funding. And to me, I think the funding is being provided. But it's also a partnership of how we get there. I don't have a problem with the city manager's proposal because I know through working together, we will get there and we'll be stronger because and how we provide the programs for the students, because that's what it's about. Students and the elderly. And we need to increase that as some of the program that is going on. That's on my list as well. So Councilman Felder, I'm trying to, Councilwoman Vining as well, both have some thoughts on this council action on how we move forward. So I'm just going to, maybe I'll ask the city manager just to repeat how it is currently worded, but then I do have a question for Councilman Felder, make sure I understand what his desire of amendment is. I think, and I may ask Councilwoman Vining hers again, because at that point, we probably should start looking at motions of accepting with some changes that were already proposed. So Mr. Pastou, regarding the ALCC, I think that's the discussion. Well, first I'll ask, any questions or comments on the public safety side of what was being proposed at the work session and on the amendment that was in front of us? I'll ask that, maybe we can check that off, knowing that what was proposed about the restoration of that funding. Right? We're all good with this. All, if the council supports that in a motion, that needs to be included to start with.
I do have one inquiry,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Yes. On that?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
on specifically
I'm just trying to
the
get-
public safety operational assessment. In adopting funding for the operational assessment, are we also adopting the plan that has been set forth, including the board members, say? That
Oh,
these
no,
would be
no,
fixed at
no,
this
no,
time?
no,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You
go
can
ahead.
answer too. Go
No.
ahead. That's a good question.
Very good
because
question.
This was presented more of an informational and coming back to the next work session to really dive into this part. But we knowing that, I'll let Mr. Pastou, why he's putting the revenue back in relation to this.
Just so you understand, part of it was just to put it out there. It was discussed last week, and so I put a rough schedule together. And thinking in fairness, when we get together 3 weeks from tonight, you at least have some sense of what that outline would look like and provide some discussion. But two things with it. One is it's not going anywhere till council has a chance to have some input on it. And then the other thing, let's just say down the pike. We go through the request for proposals and qualifications. You still have a second bite of the apple, and that's to approve whatever professional service agreement. So there are a couple of items, even though it's in the proposed budget, it's by no means a done deal going forward, so.
Yep. Not that I have any issues with the members of the board that have been proposed, just the old bait and switch I'm sort of worried about. Not that I think that you would do that, Mr. Manager.
No, but I will tell you, that is a very important question. I mean, that's something we absolutely have to discuss, the structure of that. And I didn't take it, in a negative sense. It's important enough that we have that dialogue with the council before we proceed, so.
Okay.
So this will come back to us, but it's not part of necessarily the budget tonight.
Thank you, sir.
But we will be revisiting that as far as what we propose and what kind of RFP goes out. It's a good question. So as far as the public safety side, I don't see any other comments. I think the outstanding item is on the ALCC funding. I'd ask Mr. Pastu just to not to clarify, but state again so everybody's aware how it currently reads, and then we'll see where we go.
As contained in the proposed ordinance that was submitted to City Council, it would have $70,000 in funding with the appropriation and the understanding that another $60,000 would be made available after the first of the year, 6 months, 7 months into the fiscal year, after completion of a number of items that we will have addressed in the updated lease agreement with the ALCC, mostly focusing on the implementation of strategic plan items, but also finding their way into revenue alternatives. So that's where we're at with this.
Any questions on that as stated? I'm just making sure so you first understand what's being proposed, and then we'll go from there. Sharon, personal comments. You're in an open meeting. That's okay. If it's value, we all would.
It was a value, and I'll share what the
Yeah.
comment was. It was the question between how the money would be divided between the ALCC, whether it's 70 and 70, or I think the proposal on the table that I believe that I hope I proposed was 70 for the initial 6 months, which isn't a change for the first for 2018, but then to have the $60,000 conditional apportionment that was already in the proposal, and then an additional and separate $10,000 non-recurring apportionment that I propose with those conditions and to the consent of council. So as our city manager is fond of saying, you'd get another bite at the apple.
Well, I guess I have a question because I'm make sure I understand it. I understand the money, the revenue sides, but the condition of the 10,000 is that tied to the list of items you had? Was that the money, or is it the?
Well, my hope would be that when council decides whether to apportion that amount on that date, that those would be the items that are considered specific to that amount.
The 60,000 or the
No,
10,000?
the 10,000. The 60,000 I think was largely had to do with financial reports, changes in bylaws, the administrative items that were brought up at last week's work session.
Boss, Mr. Pastu, is that what you're suggesting or implying on the 60,000?
Yeah, I think actually the first part of it is let's get the implementation of the items identified in the strategic plan in place, and then start venturing down the road with other revenue alternatives and a strategy for that.
I guess my only comment to that is I know through some of the discussions that have already occurred and some of the requests that have come from the board and others are asking for the city to take on more costs related to the facility that they currently pay for. And I would hope the agreement would address that, because you could make these adjustments, give the $140,000, and then the city also take on the additional costs that are currently paid, so then it would actually be greater revenue in some respects. But I understand your proposal. I will give Councilwoman Vining a comment to review what she's proposed, and then we'll start entertaining motions from there.
So I was proposing that we just give the full 140 for this budget cycle, continue forward with the plan that was put together between the city manager and the board president, and revisit this next year. My concern was that it was such a short time since we first saw this proposal. My second concern is we're going to give the $70,000 on July 1, but what if the standards are not met? There's a chance that the 60 could be withheld if the board doesn't meet these standards, and that's a real concern for me. So we would be, if that happened, which I hope that it doesn't, but if that were to happen, then we would be just at the 70 for the entire year. When I say we, the ALCC would only receive that $70,000 allotment. So I'm thinking if we have more time to work a plan, to work with the city, to work with some of the administration, we do need help on some of these issues. That with more time, we can make these things happen. So my proposal was that we give the entire amount during this budget cycle, which is the 140.
Other comments or questions from the council?
Just one, Your Honor, if I may.
Yes.
I don't think that either proposal is really dodging the question here. I think that the reality is on the table, and that all parties involved are well aware of the situation and what the future holds. There will be cuts. There will be reductions in budget, both for the city and most likely for the ALCC in the future. And I hope that everyone is aware of that. I believe that they're aware of that. I think that their involvement in this process and their activity in this process has both expressed the values in this budget-making process that the city of Monroe and the residents of Monroe have, and the importance that they feel this center has to provide in their community. I think they also understand that the situation that we up here face and the rest of the community faces with the expected, the anticipated reduction in revenue, and that there will be reductions, and that we all must prepare for that. And I don't think that us doing this here tonight and amending the agenda as proposed avoids that. I think all parties are aware, and council would have the discretion, based on the conditions put forth, to approve or not approve the additional funding.
Well, I'll make my comment, I guess my final comment, and then we'll see if there's a motion. But I look at the two proposals. One is more in line with what was proposed by the administration, understanding that there's a process that's going to have to be achieved, which I do support. And it really engages people now instead of a year from now. And I think it engages, like we've already had, an opportunity to sit down and move things forward. The $10,000, that may come out in the how the agreement gets signed in that if they meet the other part. The other proposal, as I see it, is it's status quo. We'll continue and we'll decide a year from now what we're going to do in next year's budget discussion, how much money that we may support with the ALCC without some expectations of measurements that we're looking for, which is what the discussion started about weeks ago and what the discussion really started a year ago, and which I can't support. I think we need to start working together with the same understanding, being on the same page, and I don't think that does that. More inclined to listen to the first, but I'll let...
Your Honor,
Yes.
just to clarify, that proposal that I made was with the work plan still in place.
I understand, but I'm looking for what
I
the
understand
measurements
what
are
you're
going to be as we move along. There's no review until the end of the year, and I think that's too long. That's just my view. So at this point, I think unless there's any other comments from council, a motion is in order. Or Mr. Buds, go ahead.
Your Honor, if I may, just to clarify.
Oh, we got to
the
pull it back for a motion.
So, for purposes of my understanding and for hopefully making the minutes clear as we move forward, if I understood Councilman Felder's position was that it would take, he'd agree with the first $70,000 during the first 6 months, and then would say that there would be an additional funding of an extra $10,000 to make an additional $70,000 together, which I guess in my mind, that additional funding, whether it be 60 or 70,000, is going to take council action at that time. And so, whether or not conditions have been met or situations been handled, that would be something that could, at least in my mind, be handled at the time of a subsequent council action.
It would, 70 for the first 6 months, and then a conditional 60 with a separate conditional 10.
Comes back to council at the end of the year.
Yes. So it could be 70 or 130 or 140.
Understand. That's what it is. So I also, I started to say there'd be a motion, but clerk's looking at me, that's not what we have to do first, because we put it on the floor for discussion. we still need to bring back under council action first is a motion to bring it to the floor for its final reading. And in that motion, if there's amendments, then they should be stated as well, so we know what it is that we're voting on, and we may ask the clerk to repeat that so we all know, because there's a couple different proposals. So at this point, looking for a motion.
Your Honor,
Councilman Lamore.
motion that we bring ordinance number 18, item number 1985 back up on the floor to propose action.
For its final reading.
Its final reading. With the amendments.
Well, that's what has to be in the motion.
No, support.
So with what amendments that you're looking at?
Let me rephrase that.
No, you're right. You're on the right path.
Start over here.
No, there's a motion and a second on the floor, so we'd have to withdraw if you want to start over. I think
I'll withdraw and start over with this motion. Your Honor, regarding item number 1985, for the proposed ordinance 18-003, I recommend that we bring it back up on the floor for its final
Correct, final reading.
for its final reading, and that we accept the ordinance with proposed changes of public safety budget as discussed in public hearing 1985, and the ALCC budget with the initial $70,000 and an additional $60,000 with conditions as set upon, with the written agreement between the city and the LCC, and also a potential additional $10,000 upon the completion of further agreements.
As was stated by Councilman Felder, is that correct?
As were stated by Councilman Felder.
So, there's a motion.
Support.
There's a second by Councilman Felder. I'm going to ask if there's any clarification that any of the council members need, or if they need to have it reread as the clerk is writing.
Yes, I have one question. The conditional $10,000, when does it come up for review, and how do we know when to present it?
My understanding, Councilman Felder, was your...
January 1, 2019.
January 1 was what I understood, too. So they both come up at January 1. So I guess the synopsis, there's $70,000 in the budget. There's a review that'll occur at the end of the year, which makes available for $60,000 as was stated, and an additional $10,000 if those other criteria items that I know Mr. Pastu has written down, and the clerk does as well. So it could be, correct?
Thank you.
Any comments? Clerk, if you could read for the final reading.
So, I have a question.
Sure.
Since I have to get it right in a minute.
Yes, you do.
So the additional 60,000 that will be looked at on January 1st, that is contingent upon completion of items agreed to between the city and the ALCC?
Mr. Sal, go ahead. Well, wait a minute. I want to hear else.
And then the additional 10 that would also be considered January 2019 will be based on conditions as previously put forth by Councilperson Felder.
I think that's what I heard.
Okay, that's
and
what I
of course,
heard,
our
too.
finance director is getting here because he wants to tell us where the other $10,000 is coming from. Mr. Sal, which probably has to be part of the motion.
That's part of the reason I'm here. Ed Sell, Assistant City Manager, Finance Director. That's the part of the motion that I thought was missing. The $70,000, regardless of how it's going to be funded, I think you should, just like we took the $225,000 out of, transferred it from contingency, it should also state that in the motion that we're taking this $70,000 and reducing contingency by that amount, so that the budget's really about allocating dollars. It's not about setting conditions on the dollars at this point. So it's more important that you get the dollars in the right place, and then if you wanted to come back at a different meeting and say, okay, these are the conditions on how these funds get distributed, then you could do that separately, and I think it probably should be done separately. As a background, the mechanism that has been in place in the past for paying ALCC the $140,000 that's been in the budget is that every quarter they send a request to me, which I basically create an invoice out of that, and it shows up on your list of bills that you pay or approve for payment every meeting. So while if you did do the 70,000, whether you change that to 70 or you change that to 130 or 140, you'd still be seeing a quarterly invoice on your list of bills that you pay. And at that point, you could decide, well, we're not going to pay this yet until we know, what we want to know about what's going on at the ALCC. So that's another mechanism that's out there that kind of triggers you to decide whether those funds are going to be paid or not. But at this point, if you're thinking that you want to put that 70,000, you want to increase the 70,000 line item that's in the budget to 140,000, but you want to put some conditions on it, it should really just be, okay, increase that line item to 140,000, decrease the contingency line item by 70,000, and then come back at a later date and decide on what conditions you want to put on that money. You have time, you can always amend the budget, you can come back later and deal with those things.
In the short version, if I hear correct, that there at least has to be included in the motion that where the funds are, transferred out of contingency, because it's got to balance.
That's what I'm
both sides.
recommending you do.
Well,
You don't have to do that.
It makes sense
but-
to me because you can't have one side that's out and not balanced with the other side.
Yeah,
So-
it's better to have it, from my standpoint, eventually we're gonna be going to some rating agency that's gonna give us a rating on our bonds, and it's better
Got
to
it.
have it look that way for the rating agency than to look like we're spending more than we're bringing in, so.
So I'm just going to go back to the motion maker and the second, that be, I guess, accept the direction to also put in there that the 70,000 is a transfer out of the contingency fund. It's about as easy and short as I can say it. Councilman Moore?
Yes, I would like to take that.
That's friendly, yeah.
Clerk Lavoy? Thanks, Mr. Sell.
Thank you.
As soon as you walked up, I said, okay, there's the other side of the ledger.
And we can just do the 70, we don't have to do 60 and 10 to mirror
Correct.
the
And
motion.
we know what
the original
I
motion.
think the city manager has the direction from
Okay.
the conversation, knowing what to be looking for in the future.
Fine, I just want to make sure the minutes reflect accurately because they will probably be referred to again.
Okay.
Okay, so now I should go ahead, Mr. Buds, and do its final reading?
Because the motion was for the final reading with those items,
Those
but the final
amendments.
reading, yeah.
Your
Mr.
Honor,
Buds?
there's been a motion and a second, but there was not a vote on putting it on the floor.
correct.
For its final reading.
Very good.
Councilperson Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 18-003, Budget Appropriation Act, July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. An ordinance to approve the budget for the City of Monroe for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019, the City of Monroe ordains.
We know what the motion was, what's included.
With the amendments.
Final comments? Seeing none? Clerk, please call the roll.
So you're
Oh, I'm
asking-
sorry. Shall this ordinance pass? I apologize. Shall this ordinance pass?
Councilperson Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Echoangeli? I'm sorry,
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 1999, Council Chambers Renovation Bid Award.
Mr. Pastu, you have some comments before we,
Thank you, Your Honor. If I could just do a brief introduction. City Administration's recommending to City Council to approve the low bid for the council chamber renovation to Soleil Building Company in the amount of $426,000, and also a separate bid amount for the audiovisual component in the amount of $177,947 to Tel Systems. There's two components to the project. Along with that, we're recommending that additional $60,000 be set aside for contingency purposes and $20,000 for architectural services related to reviewing the progress reports as well as shop drawings and items of that nature. In total, we're looking at $685,000. The source of funding for this is primarily coming from the remaining portion of the bond proceeds in the amount of $530,000. Money that had previously been set aside with in the amount of $50,000 from our cable franchise agreement, $10,000 from previous general fund allocation, $83,797 from our IT fund that we have, and then the contingency is coming $11,903 from our city general fund. That would balance out the project. If approved, the contract work would begin sometime in the middle of May and be completed, we're targeting by early September, even late September, in order to be available for the November election. We have made arrangements with the county to utilize their Board of Commissioners room during the interim period. So with that, again, we'd be recommending that approval of this item tonight.
Your Honor,
Councilwoman Vining.
I make a motion that we approve item number 1999, Council Chambers Renovation Bid Award.
Support.
Motion by Councilwoman Vining, supported by Councilwoman Whitman on item 1999, the council chambers renovation bid award be accepted, placed on file, and recommendation carried out. Comments? Yes, Councilman Lamore.
As City Manager Pastu mentioned, I just want to briefly go over those numbers again, if we could. Is that possible?
Revenue sources?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So that we're just, I want to be perfectly clear with the public that this funding can't be used in any other direction. This is pretty much where it's tabled to go.
So going through the funding for it, we're looking at, pull that sheet back up here just a moment. We have $530,000 in remaining bond proceeds that can only be used for, at this point, this project. They were initially part of the bridge project, and the bond resolution included any city hall improvements. This would essentially extinguish the remaining bond funds. They can't be used for anything other purpose with that. The city had previously set aside $50,000 for some improvements here in City Hall. We've got, I believe, $10,000 in franchise fees, and then $83,097 from our IT fund, again related to the audio-visual component, and then the balancing aspect of it is $11,903 from our general fund contingency. That's the one item that, more discretionary in its use, but that would balance it out to make the project move forward.
So just to clarify on Councilman Lamore's question, the money, $11,903 could go somewhere else. So we're getting
Yes,
a
it could.
$500,000 council renovation for $11,000 worth of general fund budget.
And I will tell you that that is the last money in is as a contingency if needed. That would be how the proceeds would be spent. That would be the last amount. Because we did put a $60,000 contingency, and clearly this area back here, back where the booth is the one. I mean, we've had structural engineers look at it, but that's the one item that, I think if there's anything that concerns the architect, it's that amount. So once we get through that, we're pretty much home free, I think, afterwards. But that would be the last money spent, if it's spent at all.
Other questions from council? There's a motion and a second on the floor. No further comment. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item number 2008, consideration regarding city attorney reappointment and retainer approval.
If I could just do a quick introduction, obviously very to the point with the fact sheet here is that the council appointed Mr. Buds back in October of 2016, and that appointment was good through June 30th this year. And what you have before you is a consideration to reappoint Mr. Buds for another 2 years, effective July 1st, along with an amended retainer, all of which is very similar, other than I think the address change that's in there, so.
Thank you. For a motion.
Your Honor,
Councilwoman Vining.
I'd like to make a motion that the consideration regarding the city attorney reappointment and retainer approval, item number 2008, be accepted, placed on file, and the recommendation carried out.
Support.
Motion by Councilman Vining, supported by Councilman Lamore, on item 2008, accept, placed on file, and recommendation carried out. Final comments from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is the consent agenda, and for approval of payments, item B, the number should read $1,388,985.95. 1388985.95.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Yeah. Councilman Lamore.
Yes, item number 1993 and item number 1995.
Very good. Other items on the agenda, council wish to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor, I'm
Councilman
sorry.
Vining?
Could we pull 1997?
Sure, absolutely. And 97? Need no other, a motion, please?
Your Honor, I would like to adopt all items on the consent agenda except those that have been pulled for further discussion.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore. Those items not pulled from the consent agenda for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, resolutions adopted, and recommendations carried out. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item number 1993, resolution spreading the expenses of rental property inspection fee on the 2018 summer tax roll.
Councilman Lamore.
Your Honor, this is something that we asked to pull and get further documentation on and discussion.
I believe the clerk has a record of some information regarding this item 1993.
Right, so this is the one, this is the rental inspection, so this is the one that Kathy Coates, who resides in Northville, has a property at 535 North Macomb. She has paid the inspection fee. She was asking for waiver of the penalty because she did not receive the notification. And the city manager and I are both in agreement that we are fine with that action, should the council decide.
So if I understand correctly, either from Mr. Pastor or Mr. Buzz, that the only item that we'd ask to have removed from the list. So the motion would be to accept minus the address of 535 North Macomb. Okay. Other comments from council? If not, a motion is ordered for that.
Your Honor, in regards to item number 1993, I recommend that we accept, place, and file, and the resolution be adopted as proposed.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Whitman, that be item 1993 be accepted, placed on file, resolution adopted with the removal of 535 North Macomb. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 1995, resolution spreading the expenses for the cutting of weeds and grasses on the 2018 summer tax roll.
Councilman Lamore?
Yes, our clerk brought to our attention that Ms. Bernice Pippins from 509 Conant wished to have her assessment spread upon her summer tax roll. Just for further clarification.
I'll go ahead.
Council, if
Sure,
you-
absolutely.
plan.
So she submitted a request to me as the treasurer, asking for a payment plan for the delinquency, and she's not incomplete. She has paid some towards it, so it's not the entire amount. And I'm agreeable to the payment plan option, as was City Manager Pastus. So the motion would be to remove 509 Conant from the roll.
Other comments? Councilman Lamore?
Your Honor, in regards to item number 1995, I motion that we accept, place on file, and the resolution be adopted as proposed.
Support.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, support by Councilwoman Germaine on item 1995. That be accepted, placed on file, resolution adopted as proposed. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is 1997, Labor Park Design Professional Services Proposal.
Councilwoman Vining.
Your Honor, I know there's been talk about a lack of investment or reinvestment into the neighborhood, and I thought this was while this is just a professional services proposal, I thought this was a perfect opportunity for the city manager to be able to discuss some of the investments we are and have been making in the Orchard East neighborhood for the last several years now.
Mr. Bastu?
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Vining. The item tonight is for the professional services with Russell Design to do the design work for the Labor Park project. This item has a base amount of $69,500, along with some other additional engineering costs, of which some of it we may be able to reduce ourselves internally. But the overall project is just a smidge under $600,000, utilizing both capital improvement funds as well as CDBG funding for this project. And so along with it is, even tonight under the consent was the acquisition of additional property on the south side of East 2nd between Eastchester and Winchester that would add and expand the project itself. And so there's more to come with it. We'll have some workshops on this project. But along with that, there's a number of, I think, the other improvements that have been taking place with road projects in the Orchard East, Winchester, Conant. I'm looking at Patrick to help me out. What's it, Kentucky, we've done recently. And then later this month, we've got, at what I refer to as the Purple Church, we've got a hearing regarding its demolition. The building official determined that it needed to be demolished, and the property owner is contesting that. But clearly, we're of the opinion that it needs to be demolished, and that hearing will be held, I think, on the 25th. And then we've got a number of grant through a MISHDA grant that we're involved with a number of demolitions of blighted houses in that neighborhood that you'll see later this summer taking place. Just completed it. I think we set up in place the asbestos abatement surveys, and so we'll do the asbestos abatement where they exist and then start knocking them down here shortly. So there's been a number of projects that have been taking place there in the Orchard East area, and I think, the other part of it is that Matt Wallace, one of our planners with community development, has initiated the process of securing an architect to redo the kitchen there at the ALCC as well, much overdue, and so that will be a project that'll be finding its way through there. So I'm looking out in the audience at our city engineer, community development director, utilities director. What am I forgetting? Got it.
That's a pretty good summation.
Okay, thank you. But that's, a lot of the projects that we've had in the recent past, and then certainly what's coming up in the immediate future.
Thank you. Councilwoman, anything further?
No.
Other comments on Labor Park design? Obviously, it's a progress that's part of our parks plan. It's the first of others that we're looking to do as well. This is where we're starting. We think we can make the most significant impact on, where there's opportunities to really develop in the neighborhood, but also around the ALCC and other neighborhood items. So, the motion be in order. Councilwoman?
So I make a motion that item number 1997, Labor Park Design Professional Services proposal be accepted, placed on file, and the recommendation carried out.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Viney, supported by Councilman Lamore, on item 1997, be accepted, placed on file, and recommendation carried out. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
I have no further items, Your Honor.
Germaine, first up.
It's been an eventful evening. I have no more further comments. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's fine. Councilman Lamore.
Your Honor, just one quick little note regarding the Insurance Agents Association of Monroe County. They had a successful auction on Wednesday, March 14th. They raised enough funds to fund 3 scholarships for Monroe County High School seniors. And I just want to give a call out to any high school senior that wishes to apply for the scholarship. They can contact Ken Miller at 248-514-8494 for more information on how to achieve that scholarship. Regarding this evening, I thought the talk was great regarding a lot of the understanding of how our funds are going to be allocated. I'm glad to see that we've come to an agreement regarding public safety and putting that at the forefront for this city. Because I believe that is one of the utmost needs of the city to keep us in good standing. So I'm glad to see that we came to agreement with that. That's all I have.
Felder.
No comments this evening, Your Honor.
Councilwoman Whitman.
Yes, Your Honor. I just wanted to let the city of Monroe know that drug court has started. And it's a program to where the people who pick up new felonies are able to, they're able to get involved with the drug court, and they have 2 case managers, one for the men and one for the women. They have peer supports who work with them. And I think right now we might have 6 clients. And there's 27 people in that room from the community representing different agencies that we all gather around these people to see what support that they need. And the first 3 clients that we've worked with, we're really pleased at seeing the success, that they are showing. They all have jobs, they're doing, they're reporting, they're doing everything that they're supposed to do. But the main thing is that if they stay in the program 6 months, they lose that felony, which is huge. So that means that they can get better jobs and they can find people to rent to them. And sometimes putting people in jail is not the only solution. So everyone that we work with is handpicked. And I just wanted to bring it up mainly so people know there is an alternative to jail. So, thank you.
Councilwoman Vining.
Your Honor, you know I'm a behind-the-scenes person, and I do a lot in the community. I don't do a lot of talking about it. But I felt led to lay out some of my contributions to the ALCC, specifically after it's been implied in this setting about 4 times that I'm not doing my job at the ALCC. So we'd be here all night if I have to check off everything that I do in the community. I've been working in this community advocating for children and families for over 20 years now. I picked up Back to Basics, which I ran between the ALCC and the Monroe Public Schools as our sponsors and fiduciary agents. I ran that program for 6 years, raised thousands and thousands of dollars, of which I went out and solicited those funds on my own from various funding sources in the county. More recently, the funding that we are all talking about that came to the ALCC through the Commission on Aging, I personally wrote that funding request with a lot of help from Jeff McBee and Vicky Tarassi over at the commission. I spent a few weeks working on that. So that initial funding that we got to start the senior program, I wrote that funding, and I wrote the job descriptions and did all the necessary work so that the ALCC could be awarded that. That program, I'm considering it a success because we hired a senior services coordinator. We have about 4 days, even though the lunch program is gone, we still have about 4 days where we offer programming for seniors in our community. Our senior service coordinator is doing a great job, and we're now into the 2019 funding request from the Commission on Aging. We've doubled that funding from the initial funding request I wrote in 2017. So I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a board member from the ALCC who was in that building and working hand-in-hand with Mr. Hoskins as much as I am. We do have a lot of hard-working people on the board, but I don't think many of them have racked up the hours that I have. A lot of people here know I'm known as Miss Kelly in the community, so I'm considered a safe place for many of the young people to come to when they need help. So for anybody to suggest that I'm not doing my job as a liaison, sure, there was a lot of, I had a lot of conflicting feelings. It's difficult to be on this council and sit on that board at the same time just because my family is from that neighborhood. My grandmother's been in that neighborhood probably 50 years, so I know everybody. I grew up coming to Monroe to visit and playing around the center, and so it's difficult. But I'm learning from sitting on this council with people like John and Vince and others here how to separate emotion from business. It's not an easy thing to do. So I will accept responsibility for maybe not laying the situation at the ALCC out before the council as clearly as I could have. But I just can't sit here and be accused of not serving my community. Again, I don't talk about what I do, but I'm connected with several agencies in this county that are nonprofit service agencies. And I mean, you can check my resume if you want to. But I just couldn't sit any longer and have anybody imply that I'm not doing my job or that I don't have any hope or concern for the community center. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilwoman. I just have a few comments, more announcements, and there's items coming up in one comment. Excuse me. Just coming up on Saturday, April 21st, is the Global Youth Day of Service, which is at the Arborwood South Elementary School. It's from 9 a.m. to noon. We talk about our youth and our youth corps we were talking about earlier. This is an opportunity to engage with students at Arborwood South and really talk about service and how, as a community, volunteerism and service are critically important because you can't expect those in positions to do it all. It requires the community's involvement. So it's good to see that we have youth and engaged in an opportunity that's there. The Founders Day celebration at the Sawyer Homestead is on Sunday, May 6th. That'll happen before we meet again. I know that they usually start earlier, around 10 o'clock, maybe, and then they have some presentations, and it goes to the afternoon, I think, to about 3. I don't have the exact time. But that, again, is Founders Day at the Sawyer Homestead on Sunday, May 5th. Well, it's been in the paper, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion on that regarding the sister city visit from Hofu, Japan. Our sister city will be celebrating the 25th anniversary. The delegation will be arriving on April 21st, and they'll be here through just the early morning of April 24th. I do have some items for council because I know that some of you have signed up for some of the activities, but also there's an opportunity for really all of our community to come and welcome our sister city. And those that may not know, it's more than just a sister city between a business relationship, but the opportunity for 5 students from our community to go to Hofu, Japan, and 5 of their Japanese students to come to Monroe has been going on for a long time. And if you read the articles in the paper, Monroe News, it really clearly speaks to the value. Mike. It really speaks to the value of what the exchange provides the student. Talked about how at an early age the opportunity not only to travel but also the opportunity to have a broader cultural education and learn about how really small the world is. But a couple items that I think one of the things that while they're here and it's through the weekend on Monday, the 23rd at City Hall will be kind of a welcoming here. Not only just the City Hall, but also all the residents are welcome to come and welcome our guests as they enter the council and through the day. Also on the 24th, on Tuesday, if those are interested, because every time that our students go to Hofu, they plant trees, and as they come here, we plant trees. We have some in Munson, some at St. Mary's Park, and at Capicelli Park. And this year on the 24th, at about 9:45, we'll be at Capicelli Park and planting another friendship tree with that. It's really the students, to hear them and the opportunities they have, it's a great program, probably one of the best in the state, because it changed from a business exchange, which was just the companies talking about how they might share some work and employees and others, but really the youth of both of our communities, that now they're adults, and even some of their children are coming forward, and whether from a host family that they were at. So I just want to put those dates out there. You'll see some additional information coming forward, and hope those that may want to join us here at City Hall. The last comment I have is more a broad perspective. Just as Councilman Lamore said, I'm looking forward to the further discussion on public safety as we move forward. There's many challenges that are going to be ahead in all aspects of our service delivery, but when we talk about where the general fund is spent and where it comes from and where it's spent, I should say, is going to impact public safety. We've talked about it for years, and I think we have to come to a conclusion of what it is public safety will be in the delivery of service, and as we solidify our partnerships on the departments, but also keep in mind the delivery of service. What that'll be, I think the assessment will get us even closer to that, and so I look forward to that conversation coming up in the near future, and of course at the next council work session, which will talk about the RFP that will go out and what some of those expectations are, an opportunity for council to have input in crafting that and giving information to the city manager. So with that, my comments are concluded. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do not have a vote on council, and so some evenings it's a little harder than other evenings to sit here and not comment on policy because I care deeply, and I'm here at City Hall, and I talk to residents, and I'm involved with a lot of nonprofits, and I'm involved with our community, and obviously the issues we talked about this evening with public safety, police and fire, obviously, understatement, they're critical to not just safety and the welfare of our community, but really all kinds of issues, economic development, all of those things, they are part of the fabric of this community. So The other issue is the ALCC, and Pastor Boone reminded us all of the 75th anniversary celebration that not that long ago we were at. And what I remember most about that evening is there was a call to action from the floor to invite people from the community to come forward, and we all have different things that we can contribute, not just to the ALCC, but to a lot of other community groups that are looking for help. But I would encourage you, since we are talking about the ALCC, that if you think you can't help them, you probably can, because we all have different talents. And so I would encourage you to reach out to the ALCC if you feel compelled, and just give them a hand and help out. I'm going to try to do that. I haven't up until this point, but I'm going to try to do that. And I also wanted to just let those that support the ALCC know that all of the nonprofit meetings that I go to, the ALCC is highly regarded and is mentioned often, and the nonprofits, the other nonprofits in the community are behind you and are willing to lend you a hand as well. So hopefully we can all move forward and get together and take care of business. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mr. Bastu, any final comments?
I have nothing.
Any comments from those present here this evening? Yes, sir. Well, we'll start there, Mike. Go ahead.
Mike, still approach the bench?
Yes, please do. The podium and name and address, please.
Good evening again, Mayor, City Council, Mike Smith, 624 West Vienna Road, Temperance, Michigan. I know that all of those sitting here currently are well aware of the upcoming May 5th Build a Better World Literacy event that will be happening between ALCC and Oaks of Righteousness campuses, with several streets closed so that we can bring in equipment. The whole concept is to make sure that kids can make the connection between literacy and career choices. So we hope to have lots of opportunities for kids to learn about those types of things. So I certainly would invite all of you to participate. Hopefully you can be there, have some fun with some kids. Many of you have vehicles in this event, so I look forward to seeing you all there May 5th. And if you'd like to hang out, we will also be distributing food on one of your properties. The multi-sports complex, up to 300, 350 families. Would certainly invite you there to assist us in loading up vehicles and making sure that people have the necessary food to sustain life. So would invite you to that event as well, as we are partners. So thank you again.
Thanks. Other comments? Yes, sir.
Mike Foley, Captain, Monroe Fire Department. One of my guys was out in the community shopping or something, I don't know, and he ran across a poster that said "Rock the Bald." So he grabbed it and he put it on the station bulletin board, and he tried to get everybody to come along with this. So he got the Monroe Fire Department signed up for Saturday at 3 o'clock, and we're all going to go get our heads shaved for children's cancer research. So if anybody would like to, obviously I'm not donating as much as other people, but some of the guys have got a pretty significant donation. We're going to go Saturday at 3 o'clock. Anybody want to donate any money to, it's 105 East Front. What was the name of that place? Spotlight Studios. I think that's by your place, Mr. Lamore.
Yes.
And anyways, at 3 o'clock on Saturday, we're all going to get our heads shaved for children's cancer research.
So the event will be at the Spotlight Studios. Is that where it's going to be held? Okay.
Yes, sir.
On front. Very good. Thank you.
So anybody wants to donate some money on behalf of the Monroe Fire Department, you're going to see a bunch of bald firemen running around.
What time is it?
3 o'clock is our time. The guy that's running the event, we got guys that are going to come in and cover shift for other guys, and everybody's going to go over and get their head shaved. Yeah, you can thank Dan Little for that. He happens to be on my shift, so
Thanks,
thank you.
Mike. Nice message. Other comments from those present here this evening? Yeah, Mr. Buds?
Your Honor, I just wanted to thank yourself and council for the continued confidence and gratitude for the opportunity to continue my work as city attorney.
We're just surprised you wanted to stay.
And
We are
not
thankful.
not much to donate.
Yeah. I just want to, I guess, I'll give a shout out to that because I think that Attorney Buds and RCO have done a great service with the city here on their leading through their first term and contract, and look forward to the next 2 years working together. And appreciate your a direction that you give us as well as your research you do for us on items. And I know it's more than just the council meeting here. If you read through the fact sheet, those that get in there, of course, he serves and gives support to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, gives support to the Port of Monroe, and other functions that we ask him to do and give us guidance. So, in fact, he'll be giving us guidance here in the closed session that's coming up next as well. So, other comments from those present here this evening? Seeing none, a motion's in order.
Your Honor,
Councilman Lamore?
I motion that we adjourn for the purpose of going to a closed session.
Or
Okay, 4. Close executive session for discussion of.
For discussion of the collective bargaining and the pending litigation.
Thank you. And there's
Sorry.
a motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Vining. Sorry, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Vining?
yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.